Hey, folks, welcome again to Ken Michaels Radio. And a big thank you to all of you who have been watching these videos that I've been doing for the past few months now. On my channel, as you probably know, I interview lots of people to have Beatle discussions. That's the work that I've been doing on the radio for almost 40 years now. And lots of people in the Beatle world, people who have worked with them, authors, people who do podcasts on the Beatles. The biggest Beatle fans that I know, radio people, I invite them here to this show. And my special guest this time is Dave Ghosty Wills. And since 1994, he's been a DJ on New Jersey's WFDU. And he currently hosts a show, which we'll talk about, which is on Sundays from 12 noon till 3, that's Eastern time, called the Vintage Rock and Pop Shop. It's really an amazing show. And he covers music from the 40s through the 70s. And he's got the most amazing interests when it comes to music. It spans all these decades, even through today. He's interviewed tons of people on the radio, and he has his own YouTube channel as well with that. So we welcome Dave to our show. Hi, Dave.
Well, hello, Ken. What a buildup. I'll try to live up to it as best I can here.
Uh-huh. And also I have to thank Dave because he was part of the reason why my syndicated Beatles show, Every Little Thing, runs on WFDU, and it's on Sunday mornings at 6 a.m. So all of you early risers.
Yes, exactly.
It's the perfect opportunity.
Right before you go to church, just put on, as you're getting ready, Every Little Thing.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about your radio background. Did everything start for you at WFDU? I know that you did start there, like I said, 1994. So were you working in radio before that?
Prior to that, I had bounced around, guesting on other people's programs, and I did little shows at little university stations here and there. Kicked out of one school, gone to another school, used their station for a while, and then eventually fairly decided that they would tolerate me for 20 some odd years, and I've been here ever since. But I've moonlighted. A friend of mine had a morning show in Boston, so I would do voices and characters for him on his program, and I have friends upstate who do a radio theater program called the Magnificent Glass Pelican. There's a plug for you. And I would go up and work with them too. So, and Sirius Satellite Radio for a while.
Yeah. When was that exactly?
I want to say it's 2003 to 2008 or something along those lines. I don't remember. It was before Howard Stern and after Howard Stern.
Okay. It's funny because we're in parallel universes. I was on XM radio the same years from 2003 till the beginning of 2009. That's when the merger happened.
And the merger was really a cover for them to say, let's get rid of all these Beatle fans that we have here. Who can we get rid of? But the same thing. Yeah, victims of the merger. That's our new podcast, Ken.
Yeah. They got rid of a lot of XM people is what they did.
Well, they got rid of a lot of serious people too. Yeah.
So talk about your show before we have our main discussion. We're actually going to be talking about Driving Rain here on the show because we thought it'd be a cool idea to talk about an album that's underappreciated or underrated in our estimations. And so we kicked this around and decided why not talk about that album. But we will do that in a few moments. But talk about the Vintage Rock and Pop Show and how that started and what it's all about.
Well, that program, as you mentioned, plays music from the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. And I had been doing since 1993 the alternative music format and punk and new wave here at the radio station. And, you can burn yourself out on these things after a while. I still love that music, but that was quite a bit over and over and over again, year after year. I'm sort of speaking to you while I'm being bombarded with text messages that are coming that I hope you don't see these messages Folks,
No, we
if
don't.
you're okay, thank goodness. You know, Mom, you got to cut that out. But yeah, so when Davy Jones died in 2012, I wanted to do a tribute on the air for him because I'm a big Monkees fan. And it just felt, I mean, it was a sad occasion, obviously, Davy Jones passing away, but to play Monkees tracks and play something other than what I had been normally playing just felt so great. So I pitched the radio station an oldies program. It was primarily 60s. Now it's sort of blossomed as my interests in music have blossomed. So, you know, now we're playing everything from Swing and Sway with Sammy Kaye to, you know, to the Alan Parsons Project.
That's very cool. I love eclectic tastes. And the fact that you go back to the 40s, and not only from your radio show, but what I see you put on Facebook, and you put everything on there, your musical tastes, your favorite movies, what books you're buying. I know that you have such interest that, you know, like I said, it spans so many decades. And how did you get into, well, this is a two-part question, because I know that you were born after the Beatle breakup. How did you get into the Beatles?
Just barely.
I know. How did you get into the Beatles, and how did you get into music as far back as the 40s?
Well, as far as the Beatles are concerned, in 1976, Got to Get You Into My Life was released as a single, and I was one of those people who heard it and thought it was Wings. Because I was aware of Wings and I was aware of Paul McCartney, yes, even at that young age. And when somebody told me it was the Beatles, I said, well, I got to look this band up. And the rock and roll music compilation had come out.
Sure.
And I had heard that at, I want to say like a cousin's house or something. And I thought it was really, really cool. And it fit in with what I was listening to at that time, because there was a nostalgia craze. And Capitol was jumping on that bandwagon. So 50s music and early 60s music was really in. And so I was listening to that just as a little kid, you know, at the same time I was listening to David Cassidy and appreciating it all the same, you know, having no real idea of time or just thought it was all good music. And then I got a little more heavily into the Beatles when I got older. So like 11 years old or whatever. But where I lived for a time in Virginia, there was literally nothing you could find about the Beatles. It's not like today. Boy, kids, you have it so good. You have no idea. You know, if Paul McCartney was going to be on television, if he was going to be on the Tonight Show or something, that was a huge event. I mean, if you were a Beatles fan, you made a point to write down when that was, circle it in the TV guide, plan your entire week around it, because if you missed it, well, that was it. Who knows when you would see him again, right, or see anything Beatle related again. So it took a long time with my meager allowance of $5 a week. It took a long time for me to collect all of the Beatles albums, which I bought on cassette, those Capitol cassettes, those blue spines, and they were all the American versions. So I will champion the American Rubber Soul. And it just became like an all-consuming obsession there. But at the same time, I had grown up in a house with grandparents and great-grandparents. And that music, the music that they loved, was very much alive in my house. So Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby and Dean Martin and Rosemary Clooney and, you know, Julie London. Well, maybe not Julie. That's a little adult, but those records were played all the time too. So I loved that music. You know, sort of the pop of the 40s and big band music.
Sure.
It all seemed very au courant to me. So later, when I was baptized in the world of rock fandom, I was a little taken aback that in most rock fandom, it's, you will only listen to rock. There will never, everything else is lame and stupid, only rock. So that took some, you know, some adjusting. But I've never just listened only to rock and roll. You know, I can sit and talk with people about anything and everything rock, but you know, I'm ready to go on Perry Como too. So
That's one of the things I admire about you.
oh, well, thank you. It's
I
nice to be
was
admired.
really, you know, you had the same upbringing as I had with my parents because I was around Frank Sinatra music too,
Sure.
Rat Pack, all that stuff. My mom was a groupie. You know, she used to follow Glenn Miller around and his
Right.
band. And so I grew up on big band stuff. And yeah, I mean, I've loved that music. I could listen to like what you played on your show today. You went from Bing Crosby to Led Zeppelin. You know,
Right. Right.
I could do that, you know, in one breath with there's no effort whatsoever. It's easy for me to accept drastic differences in musical genres like that. And I love that. I love that kind of a mix that you present in your show. You bounce around all those decades. And certainly in this day and age, and you know how certainly commercial radio is, when it
Sure.
comes to oldies, where they've eliminated 50s rock
And
and
60s.
and 60s, and now,
Yep.
you know, it's a struggle to hear 70s on some stations.
Right.
So here you are covering all that plus the 40s, and it's a wonderful thing. So I commend you for that. And I certainly hope that there are some young people picking up on some of that older stuff, you know?
You know what? There are, and I don't want to say that they've gravitated toward my show or shows similar to that because they were dissatisfied with the current state of music. They may in fact be fans of that too, but like you and I also have a wide, you know, interest in music and want to hear other things. So, you know, that's great. There are younger people. I mean, majority of my audience is older, even older than me, but there certainly are some young people who listen, and you know, it's interesting. They have the same. I feel like I'm sort of reliving my own youth with them when they discover the Beatles or discover the Monkees or whatever, and you know, and they pick their favorites. You know, it's like, oh, it's like a rite of passage.
Yeah. It's a fascinating thing for me to see anybody young discovering music from 30, 40, 50 years ago. Because when I grew up, you know, as a little kid in the 60s, and yeah, I heard music from the 40s, and, you know, it was very easy for me to take all that music in, but I wouldn't expect other people to do the same thing, you know? And
Right.
when you think about Beatle music being more than 50 years old, it's extraordinary that some young kids are discovering that. So, yeah,
And yeah, I think YouTube and Spotify and these things, which I know on some level are the enemy to the music business, but I do think on some level they help, because one thing, you watch one song and you suddenly get a recommend for something else, and I know, looking at the comments, that there are all any Beatle video or McCartney or Pink Floyd or what have you, there's always a comment from somebody, hey, I'm 16 and I love this music, you know, and that's always heartwarming.
Yeah, sure. All right. And with the Beatles, were you discovering all their other solo music at the same time as their group recordings?
Well, in the 70s, it was a little difficult for me at that young age to put it all together. I couldn't figure out if they were Beatles like some of the time and then they were solo. I couldn't really figure out what was going on.
Yeah.
Determining what was, so, you know, Imagine is not a Beatles song. Oh, that's it.
Right.
But eventually I figured it out. And then I really gravitated toward Paul. So Paul was when I was a teenager or a preteen, Paul was he was very much in our teenage consciousness, because he had done Say, Say, Say with Michael Jackson, who was obviously very big at that moment. And McCartney would sort of slot in with what was happening, currently in the pop world, and then also having this long history. And at that time, George really wasn't doing much. He had sort of taken a little sabbatical, so there wasn't really much from him. And Ringo, there was a little bit, but we didn't hear most of it. It didn't get much exposure. So it was a lot of Paul.
Right.
And John, of course, there was that strange rush to buy his records after he was murdered, which always happens when somebody famous dies. The records start flying off the shelves. So I was certainly getting the John stuff. That was very available.
Mm-hmm.
And Men Love Avenue would come out, and so there was product that was happening.
So all these many years later, would you say that you prefer Paul's music to the others, or does it vary? Or does it change from year to year, which it can?
Well, it does. I mean, it's tough to say. I mean, I guess I would still say that I'm primarily a Paul guy, but I almost don't like to say that because I feel like I'm suggesting there's something wrong with John, or that he's lesser, or George is lesser. And that's not the case. It's just that Paul stuff tends to hit me where I live. Although, I've been really impressed with Ringo's material recently, especially that Zoom In, Zoom Out EP. And I've really enjoyed that too. So, I'm kind of all over the map, but I guess I'm primarily a Paul guy, but that's today. Check with me tomorrow or a couple hours from now. It depends on what. I know the Plastic Ono Band box set's going to come out, so I'll certainly be hearing some of that. I'll get the 2-disc edition, and I'll be hearing some of that, and I'll be immersed in Lennonology for a little while.
Well, I love hearing people's different tastes, and for whatever reason that may be. And there's so many reasons, as you know, to admire any of the 4 Beatles. So, but let's talk about Driving Rain. This was the first album of all original material that Paul had come up with after Linda's passing. And this was released towards the end of 2001. This is one of those albums kind of like Press to Play, where Beatle fans and McCartney fans are very mixed on how they feel about this. Although the critics gave it somewhat of a favorable review when it first came out. Why did you pick Driving Rain? Actually, we both did, but you suggested it for an album that you feel fans should spend a little bit more time appreciating.
Well, the thing about this record is, there was a mixed reception. There's no question about it, but it seems to have turned to a very maligned attitude toward this record from Beatle fans. Or whenever I see any comments online, Driving Rain is held up as the absolute worst thing that Paul McCartney had ever done. And, boy, we used to beat up on Wildlife, but no, Driving Rain, nothing is worse. And it's constantly just ripped apart online in the comments. Now, I remember when it came out, and it didn't set the world on fire. I mean, it wasn't like Band on the Run or anything like that. But I don't remember people having quite the level of disdain that I see online regarding this album. And I don't know if it's a case of, New was so well received that people now look back at Driving Rain and go, oh, it doesn't hold up to New, or maybe they liked Egypt Station that much more. And I'm not really sure what the reasoning is there, but I know that it's not top tier McCartney, but there's some really, really great stuff on this record. I mean, there are some gems here that are being completely overlooked because they're associated with the Driving Rain album. I feel people are so quick to write it off. And we've seen it historically with McCartney records, especially with Ram. Here was an album that was held up as the absolute worst, lowest of the low. It couldn't get any more soporific. Its lyrics are terrible, and it's just and now people are scrambling to change their reviews. God forbid they're ever perceived as not liking Ram, because it's like you have to like Ram, so it's held up as a classic. I don't know if Driving Rain's going to be afforded that kind of reappraisal, but it's certainly worth a second look or a third look or a fourth look.
Well, you probably know from the podcast shows that I've done that tastes change all the time, and there's never a final word on any album or song. And I've certainly noticed, just from my own observations, online, on Facebook, social media, there's a growing appreciation now, more so than ever, from what I'm sensing anyway, with George Harrison's solo material.
Oh,
that I didn't feel was there 10 years ago or longer. And sometimes I think with McCartney putting out all these box sets of his, it gives people more of a reason to look back and re-examine this music again. I mean, Wildlife and Red Rose Speedway, when the box sets came out, people were saying, wow, this stuff is a lot better than I remembered it. And especially looking at Red Rose Speedway as a double album, the proposed double album that it was supposed to be. And people are now, I think, really enjoying a lot of the 70s McCartney stuff that I think had a more pure, organic McCartney sound, and appreciating the DIY albums of McCartney, and we've talked a lot about that in my podcast shows. I think, there's this feeling, and I brought this up several times now, that when McCartney 3 came out, a lot of people were saying, wow, this is the best thing he's done since Chaos and Creation or Flaming Pie. And I think that some fans are kind of turned off from when McCartney started relying on other producers to co-produce his albums, because I think that they had a very big influence in the way that the record sounded as compared to his music of the 70s, which he produced almost entirely himself. And when you're working with the top producers of the time, it gives that feeling of he's trying to be relevant. He wants to sound contemporary, working with a Hugh Padgham or, anybody, Ryan Tedder, you name it.
Right.
Nigel Godrich, whichever ones you want to pick, in this case, David Kahn. But do you have a feeling about that at all? I mean, do you prefer when Paul produces his own stuff and it has a more natural, if you want to use the term, pure McCartney sound? And, like I said, I think some fans are kind of turned off when he tries to work with people who are the flavor of the month.
Yeah, I don't know about that, because I love McCartney when he works with George Martin. So, there's certainly, he's certainly going to have some influence on the material as well, and certainly the arrangements. I don't know. I just see the sensibilities changing, and I see it with particularly younger fans and the very active young Beatle fans. When I say young, I get under 40, that do podcasts now and are talking about the Beatles now, that there seems to be this appreciation for albums like Wildlife and Red Rose Speedway to some degree, because they sort of fit in with a kind of indie rock ethos of today. And they can see a direct line between Wildlife and something from Fleet Foxes or one of those kinds of acts. Not to sound like a crotchety old man here, because I don't really know those acts, but those younger fans seem to hear something in those records that maybe fans didn't hear the first time around. It's like you said, times changed and sensibilities change. And right now we seem to be going through some kind of a reappraisal of past maligned records by Paul McCartney. I was listening to Sam Wiles and his podcast.
I've had him on. He's been on my channel.
Yeah. And he was talking about how he loved Wildlife, and he had a guest on from the Another Kind of Mind podcast, Phoebe. Look at me plugging away here and name dropping. And they were just baffled that it could have gotten bad reviews. To them, it just would sit perfectly with like a Beck record or something. And that's something that's changed over the years. Now, I wonder about the classics, though. I wonder about, will Band on the Run be held in such high esteem? Will Tug of War be held in such high esteem? Are those going to shift now?
It's a fascinating thing. to observe over the years, because we have no idea how
Right.
the future is going to be looking at all this music. But at the same time, I think younger fans can look at the solo Beatle catalog with a clean slate. You know,
Right.
they didn't grow up with the Beatles and then the solo Beatles. And apparently, even though I liked the solo music when it first came out, I wasn't super critical of it. And I still am not. You know, I accepted it wholeheartedly when it first came out. I wasn't saying, gee, the first McCartney album, that's following Abbey Road. You know, what is this? You know, I enjoyed it for what it was. And I think young fans are going into this solo music without that narrative of
Right.
this is what followed the Beatles. It can never measure up to the Beatles. And so to accept it on its own terms, it's easier for them to do that.
Yeah, they're removed from the timeline. So they see it, you know, they see it in a totally different way. And, you know, even as a second generation fan that I am, I would approach those records differently too, because the age that I was getting into them, I really wasn't caught up in the John versus Paul narrative that was happening in the 70s. So that was over my head. And it wasn't until later that I even learned that that was a thing. I mean, a very stupid thing, but I learned that that was a thing that was going on, and that was clouding a lot of people's judgments about records. And, you know, that's a whole other conversation about identifying so much with your favorite Beatle that you become angry on their behalf, you know, for something that may or may not happen, probably didn't.
Which is so ridiculous in a way,
right?
Because, you know, what made the Beatles was the contrast in all four of them. That's what made them so fascinating. You know, I wouldn't want John and Paul to be exactly the same artist. The contrast between the two of them are extraordinary. And, you know, that's part of what made them what they were.
Right. And they're very similar in ways too. I mean, they have a lot of similarities. I mean, John, obviously, in his solo material, as much as people at the time were slagging off Paul for ballads, how many ballads does John have all over his solo material? He's got tons of them, tons of love songs, you know, so.
And brilliant ones.
Right, and great ones.
Yeah. So since I mentioned David Kahn, were you familiar with his work as a producer, and how do you feel, what kind of a job do you think he did on Driving Rain? Do you like the sound and the production of it?
You know, there are some things I really do like about it, and it's sort of a mixed bag. And for example, I know that there are synth strings on this, right? Certainly on, rather than a string section. And you kind of expect, or at least I do, that on a McCartney record, you know, there's money around. We can get a string section in. So I don't know what the decision was to go with the synth strings. Doesn't bother me too much, but I think that's a criticism that I've heard of this record, is that it kind of sounds a little, I don't know, low budget. And I can see that to some degree. I mean, to me, this is just a very straight ahead record. It's not retro sounding. It doesn't sound cutting edge. In actual fact, that might benefit it in the future, because it doesn't really sound like it's particularly tied to a time period. I wouldn't pick this record up and go, yes, this is the sound of 2001. You know, it just it wouldn't occur to me. It actually sounds pretty fresh now. You know, it doesn't sound like some relic from the past or anything.
Sometimes when I listen to a song like She's Given Up Talking, that to me sounds kind of 80s-ish. You know,
really?
like it could have fit on Press to Play, to my ears anyway.
Well, it does have that weirdness, right? That Press to Play has a lot of weirdness. And do you want to go through the tracks on this, or?
Sure, why not?
Okay.
Let's start with Lonely Road.
Yeah, you know, what I would say about this is, first of all, that narrative that you talked about at the beginning, that some of these songs were about Linda, right? And Paul said that himself in interviews at the time, right? I think Magic
was.
Right. Yeah. And some of them, obviously, a song called Heather was inspired by Heather. So that's sort of a strange world for an album to exist in. Sort of my wife who's just deceased, and then my new love occupying space on the same record. And I can't help but wonder if some of the residual dislike that fans have for Heather has sort of seeped into their reception of this record.
I was going to ask you that question.
Yeah, I wonder about that. I mean, there is a track called Heather on here. I could see people looking at it and go, oh, no, I don't want to hear that. You know, even though it's a great little instrumental. Well, it does have one verse, but
right.
Yeah.
And your
love. But I think that's interesting. Right.
That's also for Heather.
Yeah. So I think that's really interesting. You know, some songs about Linda, or one we know definitely, but
Magic, definitely.
Yeah, and I heard a rumor, I don't know if it's true, but somebody's interpretation that she's given up talking was about Linda. So who knows if that's really the case. But
I think About You is for Heather.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I Do, right?
What about it? I Do for Heather, you mean?
Yeah. I mean, when he's singing I Do, I mean, it can't be lost on him that's a wedding vow, right? So
no, you're right.
Yeah. Sure, so that could, yeah. And I do think, though, starting off with Lonely Road, you know, he's kind of telling that story in the very beginning. I tried to find something new. He's like spilling his heart out there on that first cut. And that bass at the beginning, that's just a killer track, you know, and I know he did it live and with good reason, because it's a really, really good song. And it's one of those tunes that, you know, lyrically, it's got a really interesting tone to it. It's like a man coming out of a funk. You know, I hear your music. It's like he's being seduced in this song. You know, he's being brought back to life. You know, coming out of this misery, and, you know, is it possible to, you know, feel these great emotions again and be happy again and be happy with someone else again? So, you know, I'm again playing armchair psychiatrist but you know, I do see and hear some of that going on in that song, which makes it an interesting song. I mean, it's certainly an unusual subject matter for Paul.
Yeah, anytime that he's deeply personal like that, telling you his feelings, but it's a great leadoff track. And like you said, it really worked so well as a live song. And even though there's so many songs from his catalog that he's never done live before, I wouldn't mind if he brought back Lonely Road. I think that song kicks butt live. It really does.
If he could bring back, songs from Off the Ground that he once did live, if he could bring back Figure of Eight, you know, if he could bring back, you know, the fact that he plays these songs just to promote the album while he's on tour and then hardly ever returns to them. I mean, Calico Skies, he pulled out of nowhere and just continues to play that, which is great because it's a fantastic song. But like you've always said, because I've heard things we said today and I've heard Talk More Talk, he should be going, you know, through his catalog and pulling these songs out and play. He's already played Lonely Road with the same band. So, you know, break it out of mothballs and let's hear it again.
It's a crime that with a catalog so much to treasure, with so much amazing material, that it's very likely that someday when he's no longer with us, there's going to be so many songs that won't be represented as live recordings. And that's a real crime, you know? And I know that people want to hear Beatles. And I know that he knows that. But sometimes I just think he overdoes it with the Beatles material. And that's just...
Well, yeah, it's like 70-30, you know, Beatles to solo.
Yeah. Anyway, from a lover to a friend.
You know, the strange thing about this record is some of the ballads on here and the love songs don't quite work for me. Musically, I like this. I'm not sure of what's being said here. And again, I don't want to play the pop psychologist, but from a lover to a friend, is he referencing Linda there? I mean, what exactly is this song about? It's always perplexed me exactly. It's like "Let Me Live Again." Who is he speaking to? I like this song. I don't think it was maybe a good choice. Wasn't this the first single?
It was.
Record? Yeah,
He
that's
actually
an
asked
odd
Ringo.
choice.
He asked Ringo what he thought of the album, and Ringo suggested this as a single. But
yeah, it's. No, I wouldn't have chosen that one as the lead-off single.
Neither would I. But the
Yeah.
chorus there, once it's stuck in your head, it's like it just stays there.
Right.
He has this incredible gift for catchy hooks like nobody else on the planet. It never seems to end. And some of them are really simple melodies that just work. And no, I kind of love this song in a lot of ways, but there are times when it kind of drifts with the la la la's. It's kind of like, where do we go from here? It's almost like it's not fully structured, which is a thing about this album in a way that I do like. It has kind of a very loose, spontaneous feel, this album.
Right.
They're good enough takes. He could have perfected them more, but these are good enough. But some people like that when he's not striving for perfection, that it's more real.
There's an author, I forget which author it was, that said McCartney has a "don't sweat it" vibe in his solo career, where, not all the time, but sometimes you get the feeling he's gone, yeah, I like the spirit of that take. I know I could have said this a little better, or maybe I could have done this a little better, but I like the feel of this, so that's the one we're going to go with. And that might have been the case with "From a Lover to a Friend." He just got it as far as he brought it along as far as he could, and said, yeah, you know what, this is where I'm at. This is what I like right now, and I like it, so I'm just going to put it out, and the heck with it. And maybe there could have been something with less la la la's at some point, but this is what we have, and he could revisit this live and turn it into something.
Well, that's another thing about Paul. He's recorded his music so many different ways, and I've heard it said so many times that he's a perfectionist. And I believe that he has strove for perfection on so many albums and songs, and yet there are times when his recordings are loose, like Shoba BCCCP, or Wildlife, for that matter. And there are people who like that, prefer that, because it's the real thing. It's not doing take after take after take till you get just the right take. This is what it really sounds like when he's in the studio.
Right. The idea, I guess, is that this is sort of like listening to his subconscious speaking before any editing would come along later.
That's a good way of looking at it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What do you think of "She's Given Up Talking"? Well,
this is a song he probably will never do live. When I first heard it, it fit in with this mood, which I'll tell you about at the end with this album. But when I first picked it up, it was an album I listened to on a lot of late night drives, going from work or visiting someone, and I was always listening to this record because it was the new McCartney album, and I had to listen to it several times to do the McCartney trifecta, which is you hear it and go, I don't know if I like this. Then the second time you go, yeah, it's starting to win. And then the third time, I love this. I love everything on this. And She's Giving Up Talking just has a very strange and ominous vibe to it. It's sort of an unsettling song. And there's a strange part. This is where you question some of the lyrical choices, and sort of yappy, yappy, yap.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, where is that coming from? Like from a children's novel? There's just something very strange. I imagine a young Christina Ricci as Wednesday Addams in the Addams Family movies, listening to this song while she rips the head off a doll. It's an eerie track. Perfect for your Halloween parties, folks.
Well, I do feel like it has, ominous is a nice word to use for this, but a very electronic sound. And I think, you kind of get used to, once you study McCartney, how he places his songs, the sequencing of the songs on his albums. It's kind of like Lonely Road reminds me of Stranglehold, up tempo, first song. She's Given Up Talking reminds me of Talk More Talk.
Talk More Talk, right.
Again,
so he's replicating the press to play track list.
Maybe. Maybe that's part of why there's a mixed reaction to this.
Right.
But I do like it. It's him experimenting. And I love all the guitar sounds on She's Given Up Talking. Yeah, it's a cool track. There are a lot of fans that don't want him to do this experimental stuff. So
I like it. I mean, I don't have any problem with this, apart from the yappy, yappy, yap stuff, which is a little strange. But for some reason, I just envisioned Heckle and Jekyll for some reason. But aside from that, 3 in a row, there's nothing horrible here. This is certainly, so far, this is not an album that should be held up as the absolute worst of the worst.
Well, for me personally, in the 30 plus albums, it's probably somewhere in the middle. Probably
I'd say this is it's the second tier McCartney for me, this record.
Still? Okay.
I mean, I'm not going to put, it's not first tier. I'm not putting it up there with, I mean, my first tier might be different from yours or anyone else's. Venus and Mars is first tier for me. Tug of War is first tier. Ram is first tier. Chaos in the Creation. Run Devil Run is first tier for me, which probably is not the case for a lot of people. But yeah, this would, London Town, Driving Rain, I'd sort of put it in that area.
Okay. All right.
There is no third tier McCartney. Let me just make that clear. There really isn't, unless you want to count Thrillington. But listen, I like Thrillington. So.
Well, on a scale of 1 to 10, there isn't a McCartney album that I would place any lower than a 7.
Right. Well, frankly, he's just too good to be terrible. So when people are like, "Oh no, he's terrible," I'm like, nah, he doesn't have it in him. He doesn't have it in him to be utterly terrible. I've got some terrible records. Come over to my house. I will play you some really, really awful records.
Okay.
And then you'll hear, and then come back to me and tell me about how terrible Driving Rain is.
You should share them on your radio show.
Oh no! Well, yeah, I could do that. The Terrible Records program,
Well, just do like a feature, one song on each show.
Sure.
Then we got the title track to Driving Rain. What are your impressions of that?
This is a funky track, and I know that people don't like or they make fun of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Let's Go for a Drive. Listen, there are a million pop records that have people counting on them. This is not something that McCartney just invented. You can go back to the 60s and 50s and find a bunch of records like that. This is a happy, bopping pop song. His vocals are killer on this. He sings the heck out of this song. And Driving to the Eye of a Hurricane is just a metaphor for love. He's getting into a romance and that sort of a thing. I really have no trouble with this tune. I suppose if he chose to do something other than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, that it would be held in higher esteem. I don't mind it. Again, what's rock and roll? Womp papa loop papa wop bam boom. That's profound. So why can't 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 be something we can get behind? Doesn't bother me.
Thank you for saying that.
There you go.
This is the same man that wrote 1, 2, 3, 4. Can I have a little more?
Right. And that, people are like studying that and going, "Oh, there's got to be this is some genius here." But then he does it again later in a different context, and it's the worst.
If he did it in the Beatles, it was okay.
Right. Right. Exactly. But his vocals are just great on this track. I mean, he's straining a bit, clearly, but I like it. I've listened to this song quite a bit when it came out, and I actually wish this had been the first single.
Really?
Believe it or not. Yeah, I think it's catchy enough. Now, again, in the climate of 2001, he wasn't really going to get much airplay anyway, to be honest. But maybe the thought was From a Lover to a Friend, or even Your Loving Flame would have been a good first single. I guess the thought was he would have more juice on adult contemporary radio with a ballad. I guess that would be the thinking. But I thought Driving Rain was just a great pop song. Ain't nothing wrong with a great pop song, folks. And it doesn't have to be deeply profound. You know, you can read Don Quixote at 700 some odd pages and knock yourself out. But in a 2.5 minute pop song, it's just got to be fun, catchy, convey the message, good performance. What more do you want?
And when you talk about singles, and I've discussed this on my podcast shows, there comes a time when the radio stations that play what become the top 40 singles of the day, they're going to stop playing Paul McCartney because of his age. And that's something that affects every single artist. Paul was still getting airplay on adult contemporary with his singles somewhat in the 80s and 90s. And so I could see why they wanted to go the ballad route, much the same way that that's what happened with Elton John. You know, Elton John's hits from the 80s on up, so many of them were strictly ballads. And some of them crossed over to the top 40 charts, but he was guaranteed a hit on adult contemporary. So I could see why they would want the lighter side of McCartney there.
And that's really the last time, right? The 90s would have really been the last time that any classic rockers were crossing over with big singles on top 40 pop, right? I don't think that's happened. Nothing that hasn't happened at all that I know of in
Not
the
that I can think of.
2000s. Or, I mean, Tony Bennett has a big record, you know, but in terms of singles or radio airplay, nobody.
Well, you know, Eric Clapton had his softer side, his acoustic stuff become big hits. And that was when, the 80s and 90s?
Yeah, right, exactly.
But
I mean, you know, if Duran Duran can't get arrested on radio, you know, because they're considered over the hill. Just imagine a 60s and 70s era guy trying to get some airplay.
Yeah. Well, I still keep hearing over and over, this should be the single. This should be the single. But I keep trying to tell people, no matter how great it is, it ain't going to get the airplay and be exposed to young people. That's just the way radio works.
The best you can hope for now is an eye-catching YouTube video.
Or
you know.
if a song is in a movie that clicks.
Right.
You know, that could happen. All right, the next song is I Do.
Now, I love this song. I Do is probably my favorite song on this record.
Wow.
And I think, even with its flaws, and the flaws here would kind of be the synth strings, and I know he jumps an octave midway through the song and he almost sounds hesitant, like it was a spur of the moment idea, but I kind of like that on this track, because this to me is the Beatles song on here. I could easily see Paul McCartney at the Royal Variety performance with the Beatles, instead of Till There Was You, breaking out I Do. You know, this is that kind of ballad. And you know what's funny about this song is there is a song called This Is All I Ask, I believe is the name of the song. It's by Nat King Cole.
Okay.
And if you listen to the song and you're going, okay, it's a Nat King Cole song. Doesn't, you know, I don't see what the connection is. Then right before he gets to the chorus, he goes, this is all I ask. This is all I need. And you're like, whoa, wait a minute. And so I was thinking, boy, either it's a heck of a coincidence or McCartney was listening to that song and borrowed a little bit. I hear echoes of that Nat King Cole song in here. And then I thought, maybe McCartney owns that song. You know, he's purchased all of these. He doesn't have to, you know, he's made it so that he'll never have that My Sweet Lord kind of a lawsuit, because he's bought up all of those songs. But I really love this song. I mean, a gentle, sweet love song. I Do. It's telling you right there, you know, I think that's a marriage song. And, you know, listen, romance is in short supply in music these days, so I'm all for it.
Yeah. It's another case of, it's a very simple song, very simple melody, but it's effective and it works. And I actually like the string sounds from the synths.
Do you?
Yeah. You know, synthesizers, sometimes they fail when, I've always kind of felt that synths haven't done a really great job when it comes to horn sounds. And you can hear that live, You know, some of the stuff that Wix plays that's supposed to be horns, you know, it's not horns. It sounds phony, but this kind of sounds real to me.
Well, are these synth horns on this as well? I think these are synth horns on this.
I'm
isn't
not
it?
sure. I'd have to look.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean,
see.
as strings, it sounds like strings to me. Sounds pretty good to my ears.
Well, I love the song. I would have liked maybe a different. I actually, you know, to me, this song is so Beatle-y that I kind of almost want to hear a Beatle-ish arrangement. I want to hear a "Till There Was You" type of arrangement on it. I hope somebody, maybe the Fab Four guys, or can do that someday. But it's my favorite song on the album. I return to it over and over and over again, and I have no explanation, Ken. I have no explanation as to why I return to that song more than Lonely Road, why that resonates more with me. But I love it. If I was making a compilation of 21st century McCartney, I Do Was going on it.
Okay. Hey, look, we're all entitled to our tastes.
Yep.
And sometimes it's hard to explain why certain songs connect with you.
And folks, if you're watching this, yes, I am the patron saint of lost causes. If you don't care for this album, you're not going to enjoy my enthusiasm for it.
Yeah. I've said a number of times that growing up as a little kid in the 60s, for some reason, You Won't See Me was my favorite Beatles song. Can I tell you why? Not really.
Right.
It's just I never get tired of hearing You Won't See Me. And there's something about Paul's vocals, the high notes that he hits, and the harmonies. I guess I can kind of explain it.
Yeah, well, I mean, to the best of your, but I mean, for me, Beatle-wise, my favorite Beatles songs are Hey Bulldog, Long, 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 I Feel Fine, and Help would be in my top four. And people will say, long, 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 long. And I go, yeah, long, long, long. I don't know why. You know, I just love everything about that song.
Well, one of my guests here on my channel, Jeff Slate, listed that as among his favorite George Beatles songs. So you're not alone. Yeah. I'm glad to see appreciation for that song.
I love that. I love that song.
Yeah.
And it sounds better now on the remaster because it's a little louder. So now we can actually hear the song. So that's good.
Yeah. Tiny Bubble, your thoughts?
You know, this is one where it's not great. It's not, how can I put it? It's a little funkiness to it. You know, I can kind of see someone else doing it better. You know, I could kind of see, I don't know, like Smokey Robinson or somebody doing this a little bit better, but it's okay. You know, not one of my favorites. I'm certainly not going to skip it, but you know, I enjoy it. Now that I'm thinking about it, I like the verse more than the chorus. I feel like the chorus is kind of, it's okay. All the world's a tiny bubble, but the verse is a little cooler.
Wow. Well, you and I disagree on this one because that would be the one that I would choose as the first single, actually. Because
really, okay,
yeah, I think the chorus, which a lot of people point out, sounds like Piggies. You know, in a way. Sure. If you think about it, it's easy to get stuck in your head, and I like the verses. You know, you can't imagine just what I've been going through. It does have a really funky feel to that.
Yeah, that that if you pardon my love. Yeah, that's good. I almost wish it was played up a little more. You know, I wish it was a little more funky.
Yeah, more James Brownish.
Right. Maybe he would have done that maybe in the Egypt Station era. You know, he might have got Ryan Tedder to come in and do like a what's that bonus track that I love?
From, Nothing for Free?
Nothing for Free, which is my favorite song off Egypt Station.
Killer song.
Which that is, to me, that is Coming Up 2.0. That is such an incredible piece of music. That's my favorite cut off that.
That's another song where if it was a single, say in the early 80s, it would have been a huge hit.
Yeah. Yeah. That's going on my 21st Century McCartney compilation too.
Okay, good.
I'm making a mixtape for myself.
We're actually on Talk More Talk, our next show, we're going to be compiling our 15 favorite songs from Paul from the 2000s.
Oh, okay.
So I have a feeling Nothing for Free is going to be in there.
Yeah.
I haven't put together my list yet, but anyway, let's see. We got Magic, which is the next song.
Very nice song. you know, and knowing the story behind it, and Paul saying it was about Linda, and then we all know the story of the bag of nails and them meeting for the first time. How can you not be moved by this song, you know, especially with their relationship and everything that they went through? And it's just a sweet tune, and it's a great love song. This is another one that, yes, in a different era, this could almost have been a single too. I could say that with a lot of these songs. Yeah. You know, maybe not Rinse the Raindrops, but this is just a beautiful song about he and Linda meeting, and it's very moving.
Yeah, just the whole reality of, what if I hadn't worked up the nerve to go and approach her and say, would you like to go out with me? Imagine how history would have been so different, you know?
Yeah. And even without that backstory, it still works as just a sort of looking back on a love type of song.
Yeah. What do you think of the ending of Magic? Because they just jam there at the end. It's a very unexpected ending.
Yeah, that's sort of a McCartney solo trait, isn't it? He has a lot of songs like that. There's one, another one of the bonus tracks on Egypt Station, that Get Started, where just all of a sudden, whoa, and you're like, what the heck? You know, I was just enjoying this other tune. He did it once with Hello Goodbye and said, you know, I'm going to return to this idea of the ending that has nothing to do. We almost got it on Penny Lane. If you listen to that jam on the anthology, right at the end of the Penny Lane take, where they just sort of jam for a bit and George goes, a suitable ending, I think. So yeah, it's like, we don't quite know how to end this, so we're just going to get freaky. But that's cool. You know, why not?
Okay. Yeah, I love Magic too. Your Way is the next one.
I love Your Way. Your Way is, to me, it's of that same ilk as Great Day and Heart of the Country. And I love when McCartney does these sort of down home acoustic numbers. This is like my number 2 song after I Do on this record. It's awesome. It's from another era. It's just has that Ram goodness to it. And I remember hearing you on other shows talking about what your hopes were for McCartney 3, that he would do an all acoustic record. And I was right there with you, like, oh, please, I would just love to hear something, even though this does have electric guitar in it, but something like that would just be great. And he could do it effortlessly. And I love it when he does stuff like this. And the harmonies on this, everything about it. Simple song, but simple is best. So I'm all for it.
Well, I always want Paul to experiment and grow with every album somewhat, but there are those times when it's like, please give me another Every Night.
Yeah.
There's a certain feeling and a certain vibe, like we were talking about with all this DIY stuff.
Right. When I'm hearing this song, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. When I hear this song, I vision, the backyard footage of he and Linda and the kids. Like, that's what I'm thinking when I'm hearing this song. It's that era.
Yeah, and that finger picking.
Right, and it's Paul and Linda, on their butts going down the hill in that film footage we've seen.
Doing bip bop and stuff like that.
Right, their idyllic life on the farm.
Okay, Spinning on an Axis.
This, I think, if I'm not mistaken, is one of those cuts that a lot of people liked and I didn't. So this would be my first, doesn't do anything for me cut on here. It's okay. It's got there's a little bit of funkiness going on here, but it's not one that really moves me. So you're going to tell me this is one of your favorites on this.
It is.
Of course. See, I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum.
And that's fine. I love it because it's so different for him. There's no other song that sounds like Spinning on an Axis. And I love how he plays around with his vocals It goes all over the place. He's
Right.
really improvising with his vocals. And it's kind of like he's having fun with this. And you know what? That take was okay. I'll leave it like that. And I
Well, this
like
is,
yeah,
yeah, it's
I like
going into that press to play territory that you like.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
exactly. And he starts off with this really soft vocal delivery. And then later on, he really projects with his voice. I like the contrast there. So I like the whole arrangement. Anytime he does something that I hadn't heard before or doesn't sound like any other song he's put out before, you know, I
Right.
enjoy those.
See, for me, I would appreciate it more as a B-side. And this will be another thing. Well, I guess we can talk about it a little bit now, but I guess it starts with Flaming Pie, that Paul really started to take advantage of the CD era and make his albums longer. And I think actually, if maybe he had pruned this record a little bit, that the reception would have been a little bit better. I don't know how you feel about that.
You're not the only one that said that. One of the problems with Driving Rain is that there's too much music.
Yep.
Yeah. And even if I enjoy all the songs, it's still quite a lot to take in. I also sometimes feel, and I never feel this way with the McCartney album, that the sequencing doesn't work as well.
Yeah.
Song per song. It's like it's a whole bunch of great songs. Maybe
Right.
that should have been mixed differently. I mean, mixed in the terms of the order of the songs.
Right, right. Sequence better, yeah. Drop 3 of them, and you might have something that would have been better received. Have them as B-sides, CD singles, and you'd still have the song. I mean, both of us own Comfort of Love, right? Mm-hmm. So we went out and got that CD single back in my completist days. So, yeah.
And then there are some people like the Two Legs guys. They like to talk about what songs would you take off the album and what bonus tracks would you put on the album. And everybody, almost everyone I know, feels that Paul has left off so much incredible material as bonus tracks or his B-sides that could be better than what he put on the album.
Right. And with Off the Ground being, example number 1 on that, because Off the Ground, much like Red Rose Speedway, when we heard the double Red Rose Speedway and something like Best Friend, and you're going, oh my God, how is this not on this record? Or 1882, how is this not on a record? And at least with Off the Ground, those things came out as B-sides, but then when you hear them, I Can't Imagine and Kicked Around No More, oh my God, it's just incredible stuff. So Off the Ground is one of those where that could have been a double album.
Easily. But that's one of my favorite periods of McCartney, when Off the Ground came out and you were waiting for the next CD single and you got another 2-3 songs. It's like, wow, this is fantastic.
Yeah, I collected them all, and each one I'm like, sweet memories. This is incredible. This is great. And it kills me that people don't know those songs because they were just B-sides. Oh yeah, Long Leather Coat. He could have put out Big Boys Bickering. He could have made the protest side of the album. He's got enough of those songs. Yeah. All great stuff.
He's so prolific, this man, Let's see, what's the next one here? About You.
Yeah, I like this song. This is sort of a stomping rocker, almost in a way like a glam rocker in a way. This is not top shelf for me, but I do like it. I think I think the vocal performance is great, and I guess we really needed an all-out, stomping rocker on this record. So, not one of my favorites, but I don't turn it off.
Well, Lonely Road works as a stomping rocker for me. So,
yeah, this one though I think is a little more. This is a little more
heavier.
In your face. Yeah, it's a heavier cut.
Yeah. The About You I love a lot. To me, it almost sounds like it could have fit on Run Devil Run as one of the original songs.
Yeah, it could have. Yeah, it's
got this real fat sound to it. And there's a solo there in the middle where I'm not sure if that's guitars or keyboards, but very interesting sound on that one. And then we have Heather.
Love it. Love it. I know people will, again, because it's about Heather and it's got her name in it, setting aside whatever your personal feelings are about this woman. a woman who you've never met and never will meet in your life, all you people who hate her. But it's just a beautiful instrumental. I mean, it's almost too good to be on this record, which sounds like a terrible thing to say, but it feels like it should be the theme to some movie or something. It should be better known. It should be divorced, no pun intended, from the subject matter. Because I even like the lyrics, the sparse lyrics that there are on this. You know, they're very childlike and sweet. The instrumental is, man, it's just like some really great movie. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Melody from the very early 70s. And Jack Wilde is in the movie. Right. So this song,
Bee Gees did the music.
Right.
Yeah.
This song would totally fit into that world. It's that innocent, childlike, feel to it. But instrumentally, with the piano, it's just gorgeous. It's such a catchy melody. I mean, it's like I could almost see Schroeder playing this on Peanuts. But it's so good. It's so good. And I dislike the fact that people will hear it and go, oh, it's about Heather. I don't want to hear it. No, forget about that and just listen to it for what it is. Even when he sort of whispers the Heather at the end, it's awesome. And listen, if that's what's upsetting people about it, they don't want to hear it. Just imagine that he's singing about his daughter, Heather. So there you go. Yep. So it could be about her too. Because I'm sure he loves her, right? So why not?
Well, he did write a song.
Right. Yeah.
When he rehearsed with Donovan.
Tapes.
Yeah.
Right. And why didn't that come out? How come that didn't come out?
I don't know.
Heather. Now, I haven't listened to that in 35 years and I still remember it. So, why didn't that come out?
That's the gift of McCartney.
Right.
The melodies stay up here,
Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah. Heather is another one. It can work for scoring for a film. Sure. Definitely. And again, that melody just stays in your head. And it's kind of hypnotic for me. And you wait like 2 minutes before you even hear vocals at all. You have to wait so long.
Yeah, it was a surprise when he started singing. Yeah.
Yeah. And by the time that he's done with his vocals, the song's over. And then you want to hear it again. So I don't know. That one's a real gem for me.
And it makes me think about what we're going to get with this It's a Wonderful Life musical that we haven't heard much about, but apparently it's all written and all done.
Yeah.
I'm hoping it's going to be of this caliber, this sort of, something, an instrumental like this, I could see working in a Broadway show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. Well, we're not going to know anything till this pandemic's over.
Yeah.
And who knows if we'll ever get to hear Paul sing those songs. We'll probably get a soundtrack or something with other people singing it.
Yeah, cast album, yeah.
And there's also High in the Clouds.
Right.
Music for the animated film. So much of what he's done, like I do love the music that he wrote for Rupert. It fits so well. Paul is just he could adapt to just about anything. Tropic Island Hum is so brilliant. Yeah, but Heather is magical, that song.
Yeah.
Real winner. Back in the Sunshine Again. What do you think?
I remember not being impressed with it, but then when I listened to this record again, I really liked it. It's I don't know, it's like McCartney getting his blues on or something. It would be, for me, it's kind of a middle tier track on this album. I like it though. I feel it, maybe if it were placed differently, I would like it more. Maybe if this were the last cut on the record or something, I might like it more. Coming after Heather, it seems a little strange, and then it's going to go into something even stranger. I don't know. This is one of your favorites?
I like it a lot. I wouldn't say it's a favorite. There's so many that I really treasure on this album. But I'm glad that I have it. There's not one song that I regret being on this album. They're all worthwhile. And it does have a bit of a bluesy feel.
Yeah.
And again, it just sounds like the band is just jamming or rehearsing, and it works
Right.
like this. But definitely, yeah, I like that one. I like every song on this album. So
yeah, there's not one I would really skip. There's really not a song on here where I go, oh, I just can't tolerate this. There's not. And I listened to this album a lot when it came out, you know.
And
so,
but the thing is, do you have a full hour to spend?
well, that's the issue. And then, you know, once you're done with it, then if depending on which version you have, then you have a live quasi live cut coming in at the very end, which I guess we'll get to as well.
Yep, we're almost there.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Your Love and Flame.
Love it. Your Love and Flame. Did he perform this live? On tour?
Yes, the 2002 tour. Yeah.
Yeah, I really this is, for me, this is the big ballad of the record. More so than From a Lover to a Friend. I think this is a stronger cut.
More than I Do, since that's your favorite.
I Do is different though. This is like a power ballad. I Do is more like that sweet Till There Was You type of thing. But yeah, this doesn't capsize. I Do is my favorite, or Your Way at number 2 and Heather at number 3. But this would be number 4 if I were making a top 10 of this particular album. This would be number 4 because yeah, I really do love this. And you know, he has so many songs like these which are just destined to be discovered. Really, I mean, that's the positive spin on it. I mean, I don't think this is as good as something like Only Love Remains, but
oh no,
you know, that's a song that not many people know. You know, only hardcore McCartney fans really know that song and praise it. And I think the same with this one. It's a shame more people should know it. This should be a staple on adult contemporary, you know, a song like this. But say love me.
Yeah, to me, it's just another really strong ballad. I wouldn't, like you said, it's not in the same category as Only Love Remains or Through Our Love, which I think is one of his greatest love songs. But this song, I wasn't too impressed when it first came out, but it's really grown on me. It's got a moody feel to it that I don't sense in some of Paul's ballads, and especially the part where, and he rarely does this, he stays on the same note melodically.
Right.
What am I to do if I don't have you? You know, it's just for that alone, because I know he never does that. It just sounds different for that reason. But and I love the guitar work that's done.
Oh God, the solo elevates this.
Yeah,
the solo really elevates it, kicks it up a notch.
Yeah, but again, now I really appreciate the song more now than before. Riding into Jaipur.
You know, it's one of those songs where I appreciate the intent and I appreciate the overall feel of it, but it doesn't really grab me. But, you know, I like that he sort of returned to, you know, and sort of raga sound on a cut. But for some reason, it just, I don't know. And it's not because I'm averse to unusual things on McCartney records, but there's something about it that's maybe a little too repetitive. But see, that seems a little strange to say because ragas that's what they're known for, is that hypnotic quality. But yeah, it's weird. I'm not that crazy about this one, but I like the next track more. So what does that tell you about me? That's the definition of repetitive. So,
well, this is another one that I appreciate more now than when it first came out. And I just said rarely does he stay on the same note, but there isn't as much of a melody. I have to.
Yeah.
Now I bite my tongue. Yeah, but I love the feel of it. You know, I do like when he tries to mix in the Indian instruments into his music. There's a tempura in here. There's African drums. You just feel like you're being lifted.
Yeah.
You're being transported while you're hearing the song.
Yeah, he had done that a few albums back on Off the Ground with that little snippet of Cosmically Conscious where you hear a sitar there for a little bit. This is a little more serious and, you know, faithful to the spirit. But yeah, it's not one of my favorites, but it's not one of the ones I would kick off. You know, if I were kicking off a cut or two or three to make this album length as opposed to CD length, I would keep this one.
Yep. We lost your picture. Oh,
yep.
Now you're back.
Go. That's my battery telling me that I'm at 20%.
Oh, okay. We'll try to wrap this up.
Yeah, we're near the end of the album anyway.
Okay, Rinse the Raindrops. So you can't talk about every minute of Rinse the Raindrops.
Right. Yeah. Rinse the Raindrops, you know, yeah, exactly. You know, Rinse the Raindrops, I really liked this a lot when I first got this record. The only thing that bugs me about this is there's such an obvious edit in the middle of it. You can tell that this was a much longer jam that probably went on for, I mean, it's already long enough, but I feel like the jam must have went on for 20 minutes. And we just excised the middle of it. So I really, really like this song. And it sort of reminds me of the Police in a way. It's hard to, I'm trying to think of a song of theirs, like something off Zenyatta Mondada, where they had some freaky stuff, where the second album, Regatta de Blanc, had a couple of cuts that maybe are similar in tone to this. I know lyrically it's just the same thing over and over again, but that's fine. I mean, it's a jam, and it's just how many variations of this verse can we do, and how many different things can we try? And I really like it. I wish that they had just left, well, then it would be 2 CDs, but I wish they had just left the full thing in there, or maybe given us an option to hear, you know, maybe it's 2 takes that were put together. I don't know, but there's a very clear and jarring edit in the middle of it, which, you know, I just want to hear the whole thing. Maybe he cut out Carnival of Light. Maybe that's what was in the middle of it. He just went off on that.
And none of us will know because he won't reveal the...
Right.
Yeah. Yep. No, I agree with you. The thing about Rinse the Raindrops is, you know, when I'm in the mood to hear it, it feels great. Am I always in the mood to hear a 10-minute song? I said the same thing about Deep, Deep Feeling. You know, in the very beginning, it's like, when does this song end? And then once you finally get into it, it's like heaven. You really appreciate all the work that he put into a song like that. And whereas this is more just jamming. But if you like that kind of thing from Paul, this is the band as they are. They're cutting loose. You know, if there's any mistakes, leave it in. I don't care. And that's what I like about it. It's just sometimes it's tough to end an album, even though they tacked on Freedom. After all these songs that you've gone through, now you've got a 10-minute song to go through. So is it better to end the album that way, or maybe stick it in the middle? I don't know, like Deep, Deep Feeling was. So, yeah, but I enjoy it. Like I said, when I'm in the mood for it, it's a killer track.
Yeah, I mean, if I were going back in time and I was McCartney's A&R guy, and I would say, listen, we got to fit this on one slab of vinyl. Don't think about CDs here. I would say I would get Rinse the Raindrops down to about 6 minutes, and I would still end the album with it. But yeah, I would just tighten it a bit. Even though I just said that I really wanted the longer jam without the portion cut out. But at 10 minutes, that's going to take up half an album side. So I don't want to lose some of these other songs. You know, I'm thinking economically here. So, yeah, I like it, though. Yeah, I'm not always in the mood to hear it, but it's still pretty good.
Yeah, it's also like Wildlife in a way.
Right.
You know, that goes on for like a 7+ minutes, and you got to be in the mood for it. Right. And when you are, there's nothing like it. So, all right. I'm dying to hear what you think of Freedom after all these years.
This is this is the song that people really, really hate. All I can say to that is around this time of September 11th, Paul was not alone in releasing songs that were inspired by 9/11. I worked in radio. You were in radio at that time. We were getting them in like in truckloads. Everybody had a song. Listen, I mean, it's a terrible, terrible event in history. And people are going to try to, you know, do something to have some kind of a song. This was obviously tied to the benefit for the firefighters. I know that the sentiment of the song people have soured on over time, but all I say to that is put yourself back around that time. And I was in New York City. I didn't go to the concert, but I was in the city right near when the concert was going on, and I just remember that time. And a lot of people were, you know, they were angry and they wanted to hear some kind of a hopeful song that would be anthemic. And Paul, to his credit, he tried to do one, and it just didn't catch on. You know, it's probably the worst thing you can say about it, I guess, is that it just didn't catch on for whatever reason. He certainly had it going in concerts, and he did it at the concert for New York. I mean, debuting a new song and all that, but for whatever reason, it just didn't take with the public.
It's hard for me to understand that in a way, because I like the song. The only problem I have about it as a composition is that it sounds like he just dashed it off, which he has that ability to do. There are certain songs from Paul through the years that I feel like, oh, he could have written that in 5 minutes. I feel that way about, I always bring up Dance Tonight. Dance Tonight sounds like something he just, couple minutes, done. You know,
well,
and Freedom, I just wish that he wrote 1 or 2 more verses. He only wrote a couple of verses, but I guess the focus had to be on that chorus. And it's a great chorus.
Yeah.
And
it's like Give Peace a Chance. Nobody sings the verse to Give Peace a Chance. Nobody knows it. You know, people get together and they sing, you know, they sing the chorus. And so that's obviously what he was going for here. I had heard people say, oh, it's a rewrite if I had a hammer. I mean, maybe it's a similar chord structure or something, but I never really thought of if I had a hammer when I was listening to Freedom. I know that I remember McCartney saying, oh, I stopped playing this. He was asked about it. Why did he stop playing it on the tour? And he said, well, you know, it was taken up by the Bush administration or something along those lines. And then I thought, no, it wasn't. I don't think anybody really took up this song. I mean, I think that the reason that he didn't play it is it just didn't catch on. You know, it just, for whatever reason, it was not the song for the moment. People wanted to hear Hands by Jewel. You know, that seemed to be that was an old song, but for whatever reason, that was number 1 on the radio at that time. That was the song everybody wanted. So they just didn't want that from Paul at that moment. I like it though. You know, I like it as a song, even though this is sort of a doctored, this is not the live version of it. It's got a studio vocal, right? And Eric Clapton's guitars.
Yeah. No, it's a combination of the live and I think new in the studio vocals from Paul, I think. But it's a mixture. It's not the pure live, 100% live.
Yeah. I know people will say, well, you know, he's mentioning fighting on there and you know, he really shouldn't do that. But you have to put yourself back into that time period. I mean, people were devastated, angry, confused, and, you know, they were looking for a song that would resonate. And fortunately, this was just not the one for them to get behind. But I like it though. I don't know if it really, you know, tacking it onto this album at the end would have been better as a standalone single.
Maybe Paul just want to give the fans more for the money. Right?
Well, yeah, it's value for money, certainly. I guess you could look at it that way, but I don't know how that fits on this record, because now when people talk about this record, like we are now, all these years later, you know, you have to mention this song, which seems at odds with everything we just heard. You know, we have this doctored live recording to round out after a 10-minute jam of Rinse the Raindrops. Then we have this doctored live recording. You know, maybe if it started the album, it could work, I suppose.
But for those that hate the song, that would make it even worse.
Right. But
I don't know.
Yeah, I like it though. It's good for what it is.
Okay, so your final thoughts on the album?
Like I said, it's not top tier McCartney. I wouldn't put it in my top 10, but I think, as we've discussed, the sequencing is a problem. I think there's just an issue with the track order. I think there's a little too much of it. I think you could drop, I'm going to say 2 cuts, maybe 3. and I think you'd have a stronger package. And I would take off Freedom on there and make that a standalone single. But I like this record. I have fond memories of this when it came out. I listened to it all the time. It was, for a while there, it was my most listened to McCartney record. So I have some favorites. I mean, I Do, as I mentioned, is just a beautiful, sweet song. Heather, the instrumental, I never get tired of hearing. Your Way, morning, noon, and night for me with Your Way. I just love that. Your Loving Flame, when that guitar solo kicks in, that's classic McCartney. I'm not saying it's, Your Loving Flame is as good as Maybe I'm Amazed, but I'm going to say it's cut from the same cloth. And I think if you like that, you'll probably dig Your Loving Flame. And, if people are down on this record because they've just seen comments on Facebook about how it's not any good, they'd be better off just listening for themselves and seeing if they enjoy it. Because I think if you enjoyed New, and if you enjoyed Egypt Station or Chaos and Creation in the Backyard, you're going to find something to like on Driving Rain. I don't think there is no McCartney album where I just go, oh, there's nothing here for me.
Right.
And there's plenty here. I just went through, there's only like 2 or 3 tracks where I'm like, and even those, it's not that I don't like them.
Right.
They're just not the best.
No,
he had all the best. He had all the best. This could be not the best. I'm kidding. But there's great stuff on here.
Yeah. Well, I think in recent years, this album has grown on me more than any other solo McCartney album, mainly because, I liked it when it first came out. I wasn't crazy about it. Now I like it a lot more. And playing this in the car, there's some pretty cool bass work from Paul that maybe I hadn't noticed before. But so many of these songs. I love when there's variety, which is like Paul McCartney's middle name. There's so much of everything, like the traditional McCartney stuff, the ballady stuff, Your Love and Flame, I Do, the rockers, Lonely Road would fall into that category, or About You. But then there's the more experimental stuff, like She's Given Up Talking and Spinning on an Axis and Tiny Bubble. So there's a little bit for everybody there, much the same way that Press to Play is. And Press to Play is like my second favorite of all of McCartney's albums. So, I like when Paul mixes all that up and presents it as one album. And some people feel it might be too much for them to take in all these different styles.
Well, I always like that that's one of the reasons I like, McCartney. It's one of the reasons I like Queen, because they always have so many different genres and styles represented on their albums. And, if you're somebody who likes long form jams, well, here we are with Rinse the Raindrops. You got everybody's covered on this record. Like I said, there's something for everybody on this. I know Elvis has that title, he already used it. So McCartney can't go with something for everybody, but he could have called it that and it would have worked, because there is a little something here for everybody. There's enough little Ram goodness on Your Way. There's some bouncy pop with Driving Rain. You've got your stomping all out rocker on About You. You've got your big power ballad with Your Loving Flame. There's what's not to love. Maybe there are some things that, or let's put it this way, what's not to like? Or maybe love is too strong. Maybe not everybody's going to love everything, but what's not to like about this album?
And like you said earlier, kids these days, or I should just say people in general, are so spoiled. They could just go on YouTube and check it out and listen for themselves. They don't have to go into a retail store, like how many of us do that, and search for it and buy it. You can listen to it as many times as you like online now. And I would certainly recommend to everyone to listen several times to this album. Definitely.
Now what's not to love about this record is this cover is not to love. I'm not a big fan of this. When this album came out, I didn't even find it in the stores at first because I couldn't figure out what the new McCartney album looked like. Eventually they had a slipcase to promote the tour. But I'm not a big fan of this cover. What do you think of the cover art?
I'm not crazy about it, but I don't spend that much time looking at album covers. You know, even though we're talking about a band that revolutionized album covers,
Right.
you know, but there are some that stand out in my mind in the solo careers as well. But I just go right to the music now, you know, and I'm very pleased with this album. But yeah, this looked like this was right off his watch, right? He took a photo from
Yeah,
his watch.
right. He's like
Like,
leaning on a mirror taking a photo.
yeah, it's just
So
like
can I
such
tell
a,
my
yeah,
go
good,
ahead. Go ahead. Can I tell my Driving Rain story
good.
to wrap it up? Here's my Driving Rain story. So when this record came out, much like Paul, I had just left one relationship and was looking. I didn't have, Paul had somewhere to go. I was looking for the next, really charitable, unlucky woman to come along and put up with me. So I was listening to this album a lot as I was commuting back and forth, and usually in the evenings. And I would always frequent this particular bar in upstate New York. And there was a bartender there, beautiful girl behind the bar. She, I can't even explain it to you, Ken, but I can just say that she was like the character of the Kate Hudson character in Almost Famous brought to life.
Okay.
She was just like an angel dropped from heaven, sweet as can be. I was going in this bar at least once or twice a week. And was I going in for like a beer after work? No, not really. I was going in trying to pluck up the courage to speak to this angel from heaven, this beautiful woman. And I'd walk in, I'd see her, and I'd just think, oh, I'm just this schlub. I can't do it. And I just couldn't get my nerve up. So I would listen to Driving Rain to sort of get me in the mood, to get pumping, to get some confidence. And so I would listen. And every time it was like, oh, tonight's the night. I'm gonna speak to her. I'm gonna have a conversation. And one night, after many, many weeks of this back and forth, listening to Driving Rain, getting in the mood for it, I show up at the bar, and she's not there. She's not tending the bar. Someone else is there, some guy. And after a while, I'm just sitting there, and I'm wondering, oh, what happened to, I don't know what her name was, let's say Sheila. What happened to Sheila? And the guy said, oh, we had to let her go. Really? You had to let her go? Why? He's like, oh, well, we had a real problem with her. It seems like any guy that even said hello to her, she would just go to bed with them. Anybody that showed up, she was going home with a different guy every night. And it just got to be fights, guys coming in, where's my girl? Oh, that's my girl. And so we had to let her go. And so that is my Driving Rain story. That's a true story. I spent all that. Now, maybe I was better off with knowing this information now.
Yeah. That
this was what she really was like. That's, there's a lesson learned there. She might have looked like an angel, but, wasn't really the case. But that I will always associate that period of time, a period in my life with this particular album, Driving Rain.
Or you could have been the right guy for her.
Yeah, I could have changed her. She could have changed. She could have changed her wanton ways. I would have been of such pure of heart and goodness. I would have played I Do for her, and that would have changed everything.
Yeah. And by the way, since you mentioned Kate Hudson and Almost Famous, what was the name of her character?
Penny Lane, of course.
There you go.
Yeah,
gotta say that on a Beatles channel here.
Oh,
we're losing.
I'm getting
your
the
picture?
Warning. Yeah, my phone is.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
We should probably let you go, but we got to have you back here. I want to talk about the interviews that you've done.
Oh yeah, we can do that with some time.
So for those of you who want to check out Dave's show, which is called the Vintage Rock and Pop Shop, it's on WFDU, which is 89.1 in the New York, New Jersey listening area. And on the internet, WFDU.FM. And it's on Sundays from 12 noon to 3 p.m. That's Eastern. He also has his own YouTube channel, which is GHOSTY TMRS. Loads of interviews that are on there. And he is an amazing interviewer. I regret we haven't talked about this enough. You've interviewed so many people in pop culture. It's amazing.
I've even interviewed Ken Michaels. I think there's even an interview with Ken Michaels.
Probably the least watched video. But it's cool. I remember one time you interviewed Angela Cartwright. I said, oh, I got to hear this.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Angela Cartwright. Sure.
Yeah. But so many people in television and films.
Yeah. We try to get them if they're available to do it. And who do I have coming up? I don't know. People watch this anytime. It could be 2 years from now and they can watch it. But one day, maybe I'll get Paul McCartney on what a dream that would be. But
you'll have to include me on that one, though.
Yeah, of course. I have to include a lot of people if that ever happened.
You just did an interview George Shakiris, which I really liked a lot.
Thank you. Yeah.
Bernardo from West Side Story. You should work on getting a West Side Story reunion.
Yeah, well, there is somebody here who's works with Rita Moreno, so maybe that could happen. Yeah. Movies and film and television from especially the 50s and very early 60s is sort of my big love. So I try to get singers like Dodie Stevens on the show, and we've had Johnny Mathis on the program, and in terms of acting, Barbara Eden's been on. So all those folks.
God bless her. She just turned 90, right?
Right, and looks fantastic.
I know.
She's 90, but I mean, she looked great. She's just permanently going to look great. That's all there is to it. Yeah.
All right. Well, Dave, this has been wonderful. Thanks for coming on to my channel.
My pleasure.
Have to have you back again. Let me know when you want to talk Beatles, any subject where the Beatles are concerned. And thanks to all of you for watching. Please subscribe to this channel and to my other podcasts for Talk More Talk and things we said today. So thanks to all of you for watching, and we'll see you next time.